mantras of our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, when you get the true intuitive plane, there will be no need for instructions or questions as to how to do the sadhana. The sadhana will do itself under the light of the intuition. With always our love and blessings, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo Savitri, Book 6, The Book of Fate, Canto 2, The Way of Fate and the Problem of Pain, page 451. The secret law of each thing is fulfilled. All contraries heal their long dissidence. There meet and clasp the eternal opposites. There pain becomes a violent, fiery joy. Evil turns back to its original good, and sorrow lies upon the breast of bliss. She has learned to weep glad tears of happiness. Her gaze is charged with a witful ecstasy. Then shall be ended here the law of pain. Earth shall be made a home of heaven's light. A seer, heaven-born, shall lodge in human breast. The superconscient beam shall touch men's eyes, and the truth-conscious world come down to earth, invading matter with the spirit's ray, awaking its silence to immortal thoughts, awaking the dumb heart to the living word. This mortal life shall house eternity's bliss. The body's self-taste immortality. Then shall the world Redeemer's task be done. Till then must life carry its seed of death, and sorrow's plaint be heard in the slow night. O mortal, bear this great world's law of pain in thy hard passage through a suffering world. Lean for thy soul's support on heaven's strength. Turn towards high truth, aspire to love and peace. A little bliss is lent thee from above, a touch divine upon thy human days. Make of thy daily way a pilgrimage, for through small joys and griefs thou movest towards God. Haste not towards Godhead on a dangerous road. Open not thy doorways to a nameless power. Climb not to Godhead by Titan's road. Against the law he pits his single will. Across its way he throws his pride of might. Heavenward he chambers on a stair of storms, aspiring to live near the deathless sun. Words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo, taken from the compilations of the works of our Lord, book Emergence of the Psychic, topic Psychic Transformation. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, purification and consecration are the two great necessities of sadhana. Those who have experiences before purification run a great risk. It is much better to have the heart pure first, for then the way becomes safe. That is why I advocate the psychic change of the nature first, For that means the purification of the heart, the turning of it wholly to the divine, the subjection of the mind and vital to the control of the inner being, the soul. Always when the soul is in front, one gets the right guidance from within as to what is to be done, what is to be avoided, what is the wrong thing or the true thing in thought, feeling, and action. But this inner intimation emerges in proportion as the consciousness grows more and more pure. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, between psychization and spiritualization, there is a difference. The spiritual is the change that descends from above. The psychic is the change that comes from within by the psychic dominating the mind, vital and physical. Psychization means the change of the lower nature, bringing right vision into the mind, right impulse and feeling into the vital, right moment and habit into the physical, all turned towards the divine, all based on love, adoration and bhakti. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the spiritual change is the established descent of the peace, light, knowledge, power, bliss from above, the awareness of the self and the divine, of a higher cosmic consciousness, and the change of the whole consciousness of that. The two feelings are both of them right. They indicate the two necessities of sadhana. One is to go inward and open fully the connection between the psychic being and the true outer nature. The other is to open upon the divine peace, force, light, ananda from above, to rise up into it and bring it down into the nature and the body. Neither of these two movements, says our Lord, the psychic and the spiritual, is complete without the other. If the spiritual ascent and descent are not made, the spiritual transformation of the nature cannot happen. If the full psychic opening and connection is not made, the transformation cannot be complete. There is no incompatibility between the two moments. Some begin the psychic first, others the spiritual first. Some carry on both together. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, one can concentrate in any one of the three centers, which is easiest to the sadhak, or give it more result. The power of the concentration in the heart center is to open that center, and by the power of aspiration, bhakti, surrender, to remove the veil which covers and conceals the soul, and bring forward the soul or the psychic being to govern the mind, life and body, and turn and open them all fully to the divine, removing all that is opposed to that turning and opening. This is what is called in this yoga the psychic transformation. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the power of concentration above the head is to bring peace, silence, liberation from the body sense, the identification with mind and life, and open the way for the lower mental, physical, vital consciousness to rise up to meet the higher consciousness above, and for the powers of the highest, that is the spiritual nature, consciousness, to descend into mind, life and body. This is what is called in yoga the spiritual transformation. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, if one begins with this moment, then the power from above has in its descent to open all the centers, including the lowest center, to bring out the psychic being. For until that is done, there is likely to be much difficulty and struggle of the lower consciousness obstructing, mixing with, or even refusing the divine action from above. If the psychic being is once active, if the psychic being is once active, this struggle, these difficulties can be greatly minimized. The power of concentration in the eyebrows is to open the center there. It liberates the inner mind and vision and the inner or yogic consciousness and its experiences and powers. From here also one can open towards and act in the lower centers, but the danger in this process is that one may get shut up in one's mental spiritual formations and not come out of them into the free, integral spiritual experience and knowledge and integral change of the being and nature. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, so the first thing to be done is the psychic change, and until that has progressed sufficiently, supermind is a far off thing and people need not think of it at all. It is the supramental alone that can transfer the material being, but the physical mind, vital, can be very much changed by the action of the psychic and of the overmind. The entire change, however, is made only when there is the supramental influence, but for the present, the psychic is the force that may be relied on for the preliminary purification of the lower nature. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, as the crust of the outer nature cracks, as the walls of the inner separation break down, the inner light gets through, the inner fire burns in the heart, the substance of the nature and the stuff of consciousness refined to a greater subtlety and purity, and the deeper psychic experiences, those which are not solely of an inner mental or inner vital character, becomes possible in this subtler, purer, finer substance. The soul begins to unveil itself. The psychic personality reaches its full stature. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the soul, the psychic entity, then manifests itself as the central being, which upholds the mind, life, and body and supports all the other powers and functions of the spirit. It takes it a great function as the guide and ruler of the nature. A guidance, a governance begins from within, which exposes every moment to the light of truth, repels what is false, obscure, opposed to the divine realization. Every region of the being, every nook and corner of it, every moment, formation, direction, inclination of thought, will, emotion, sensation, action, reaction, motive, disposition, propensity, desire, habit of the conscious or the subconscious physical, even the most concealed, camouflage, mute, recondite, is lighted up with the unerring psychic light, their confusions dissipated, their tangles distangled, their obscurities, deceptions, self-deceptions precisely indicated and removed, all is purified, set right, the whole nature harmonized, modulated in the psychic key, put in the spiritual order. This process may be rapid or tardy according to the amount of obscurity and resistance still left in the nature, but it goes on unfaltering so long as it is not complete. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, as a final result, the whole conscious being is made perfectly apt for the spiritual experience of every kind, turned towards the spiritual truth of thought, feeling, sense, action, tuned to the right responses, delivered from the darkness and stubbornness of the tamasic inertia, the turbidities, the turbulences, impurities of the rajasic passion, and restless, unharmonized kinetism, the enlightened rigidities and sattvic limitation, or poised balancements of constructed equilibrium, which are the character of the ignorance. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, this is the first result, but the second is a free inflow of all kinds of spiritual experiences, experience of the self, experience of the Ishvara and the divine Shakti, experience of cosmic consciousness, a direct touch with the cosmic forces and with the occult moments of universal nature, a psychic sympathy and unity and inner communication and interchanges of all kinds with other beings and with nature, illumination of the mind by knowledge, illumination of the heart by love and devotion, and spiritual joy and ecstasy, illumination of the senses and the body by higher experiences, illumination of dynamic action in the truth, largeness of a purified mind and heart and soul, the certitude of the divine light and guidance, the joy and power of the divine force working in the will and conduct. These experiences are the result of an opening outward of the inner being and inmost being and nature. For there comes into play the soul's power of unerring, inherent consciousness, its vision, its touch on which things which are superior to mental cognition, there is there native to the psychic consciousness in its pure working, an immediate sense of the world and its being, a direct inner contact with them, a direct contact with the self and the divine, a direct knowledge, a direct sight of truth, of all truths, a direct penetrating spiritual emotion, feeling, a direct intuition of the right will, right action, a power to rule and to create an order of the being, not by the gropings of the superficial self, but from within, from the inner truth of self and things and occult realities of nature. But all this change, all this experience, though psychic and spiritual in essence and character, would still be in its part of life effectuation on the mental, vital, and physical levels. Its dynamic spiritual outcome would be a flowering of the soul, mind, life, and body, but in act and form it will be circumscribed within the limitations, however enlarged and rarefied, of an inferior instrumentation. It would be a reflected, modified manifestation of things whose full reality, intensity, largeness, and oneness, and diversity of power and delight are above us, above the mind, and therefore any perfection within the mind's own formula, foundations, or superstructure of our personal present nature. A higher spiritual transformation must intervene on the psychic or the psycho-spiritual change. The psychic movement inward to the inner being, the self or a divinity within us, must be completed by an opening upward to a supreme spiritual status or a higher existence. This can be done by our opening into what is above us, by an ascent of consciousness into the ranges of overmind and supramental nature in which the senses of self and spirit is ever unveiled and permanent, in which the self luminous instrumentation of the self and spirit is not restricted or divided as in our mind nature, lower nature, life nature, or the body nature. This is also the psychic change makes possible, for as it opens up to the cosmic consciousness now hidden from us by many walls of limited individuality, it opens us to what is now superconscient, to our normality, because it is hidden from us by the strong, hard, bright lid of mind constricting, dividing, and separate. The lid thins, is slit, breaks asunder, or opens and disappears under the pressure of the psycho spiritual change and natural urge of the new spiritualized consciousness towards that of which it is an expression here. This effectuation of an aperture, its consequences, may not take place at all if there is only a partial psychic emergence, satisfied with the experience of the divine reality in the normal degree of the spiritualized mind. But if there is any awakening of the existence of these higher supernormal levels, then an aspiration towards them may break the lid or operate a rift in it. This may happen long before the psycho spiritual change is complete, or even before it has well begun or proceeded far, because the psychic personality has become aware and has an eager concentration towards the superconscious. An early illumination from above, rendering of the upper element can come as an outcome of aspiration, inner readiness, or it may even come uncalled for, or not called for by any conscious part of the mind, perhaps a secret subliminal necessity, or by an action or pressure from the higher levels, by something which is felt, by the touch of the divine being, the touch of the spirit, and its results can be exceedingly powerful. But if it is brought about by a premature pressure from below, it can be attended with difficulties and dangers which are absent when the full psychic emergence proceeds. This first admission to the superior ranges of our spiritual evolution. The choice, however, does not always rest with our will, for the operations of the spiritual evolution in us are very various according to the line it has to be followed, will be the turn to be taken at the critical phase by the action of the consciousness force in its urge towards a higher self manifestation and formation of the existence. It follows that the psychic and spiritual transformation may be advanced and complete, thereby can be any beginning of the third and consummating supramental change. For it is only by this double transmutation that the self will of the ignorance can be totally altered into a spiritual obedience to the remolding truth and the will of the consciousness of the great consciousness of the infinite. To be continued. Prayers and Meditations, May 31st, 1914. When the sun set in the Indran contemplation of the calm twilight, all my being prostrated itself before thee, O Lord, in mute adoration and complete self-giving. Then I was the whole earth, and the whole earth prostrated itself before thee, imploring the benediction of thy illumination, the beatitude of thy love. O the kneeling earth that supplicates to thee, then is ingathered in the silence of the night, waiting in both patience and anxiety for the illumination so ardently desired. If there is a sweetness in being, thy divine love at work in the world, there is as great a sweetness in being the infinite aspiration which rises towards that infinite love, and to be able to change thus, to be successively, almost simultaneously, what receives, what gives, what transfigures, what is transfigured, to be identified with the painful darkness as with all powerful splendor, and in this double identification to discover the secret of thy sovereign unity. Is this not a way of expression of accomplishing thy supreme will? O my sweet Master, my heart is a flaming chapel, and thou art seated there permanently like the sublimest of idols, so it is that thy form appears to me clothed in magnificence in the midst of the flames consuming my heart for thee, and at the same time in my head I see thee, know thee as the inconceivable, the unknowable, the formless, and in this double perception, this double knowledge lies the plenitude of contentment.
एकस्तथा सर्वभूतान्तरात्मा रूपं रूपं प्रतिरूपो वहिश्च वायुर्यथैको भुवनमप्रविष्टो रूपं रूपं प्रतिरूपो बभूव एकस्तथा सर्वभूतान्तरात्मा रूपं रूपं प्रतिरूपो वहिश्च